What's up, everybody? We're back in business. I didn't stream during the weekend because I needed a break. I was getting pretty burnt out. Um, I realized that I just didn't want to like stream any like lecture based stuff recently. But luckily, to assist with the comeback, we got a question here from Oxdon. Um, part of my League of Legends 5 stack. And so which I know immediately invalidates everything I'm about to say as a therapy student. Reminder that nothing I say is meant to be taken as like mental health advice or anything like that, or God forbid medical advice or anything. So if you have a concern, then like go see someone who's actually like licensed and everything. This is just meant for entertainment purposes and educational purposes. But don't take anything I say as gospel. Do your own research, all that stuff, yada yada yada. Anyways, so today got a very cool question. Once again, the questions, and I prefer you guys to keep doing this. So don't take this as me being like, oh well, if I had to do this because they did that. Like it helps me more for me to know. But like I shorten the question for people who come in on stream. But the shortened version is how has social media impacted our ability to form our own opinions. The long version that she sent me was, has the overconsumption of social media become detrimental to the human ability to form one's own opinion, ultimately resulting in a lack of social development in our current world? And like, man, what a beautiful question. So we're gonna kind of deep dive today into like social media and echo chambers and all that sort of stuff. And this is a topic that I really, really like because I feel like society as a whole tends to be decently knowledgeable about social media, but like I feel like there's a lot to say regarding this sort of stuff. Um, and so let's just jump right into it. Let's break it down, and I can save the disclaimers for later. Um, so so I'm going to start off with a fact that is probably obvious to a lot of people, especially if you've been on social media. So algorithms, I don't even think that's how you spell it, have one purpose, and that is to drive engagement. So like this seems obvious, and it is. But like in my opinion at least, but like let's think about like what this like literally means. So like a lot of people have problems with social media websites as a whole, and they often have this thing where it's like, it's ruining our society and all this sort of stuff. And like the thing is that I don't disagree with that at all. Like I think social media is like currently on the whole bad, at least in my opinion. Like I think that is the potential to be good, but like I think that like this is a new challenge to the human race in terms of how to navigate certain challenges that are incredibly unique and not like anything we've faced before. And so we need to learn to like evolve with this. I'm not saying it's not the responsibility of the people to do this, to mediate their own programs and stuff like that, because like studies have shown that like people will just like, it takes advantage of the way your brain works. And so like I'm not trying to victim blame, but like it's like society kind of wants, quote unquote, the unhealthiness, and I'm going to kind of deep dive into that. So like at some degree I don't think that like, because none of this really, I don't think, I'm not a law expert, like I don't think that social media, just because it makes people unhealthy, is violating any sort of constitutional right or anything like that. Like you have a right to not consume it, obviously. But it does take advantage of your mind in very subtle ways that like the app developers have figured out. Um and so like and so like how do they dr- drive engagement then? And so they do this through a numerous amount of ways that are all kind of, they kind of form like, because like we think of social media as so like monolithic as a problem. Like we think of it as like this huge thing that is really hard to like actually like stop, like to stop being addicted to. And like that's because it kind of forms like a web. Like you can make like a cut into a web, but then like, you know, like it's just like that doesn't destroy the whole web. Like it's really hard to destroy a web because it's so intricately like structurally sound. And I'm going to explain why the ways that social media interacts with our brain is so multifactorial that like this is why just like a lot of people quitting social media cold turkey is not effective, because it takes advantage of so many subtle little parts of your brain. um it is possible to just like quit like social media altogether. Like I don't use social media really at all. Like I use YouTube, but I don't use like I don't use like Twitter or Snapchat or TikTok or anything like that. And like a lot of people see that as like the people who are like, yo, you go to McDonald's. I never go to McDonald's. Like, but that's not. I don't mean it in like a condescending way. I literally mean it just like I'm like I quit social media and like I found it makes me happier. Like I feel like I'm more productive and I have a lot more. I'm just generally more happy about life. I realize that my ego is a lot less present. I realize that my amygdala isn't like hyperactivating and everything, which we'll talk about. But like I'm not telling you guys you should quit social media. Like you guys do what's best for you. But like I came to the realization that it wasn't good for me, so I stopped. But none of this is a judgment value on anyone else. Like everyone has their own reasons for doing things, and like if you need to if you do what you need to do. I'm making any decision on your behalf. I'm just saying that like if you do want to quit social media, there is ways to quit it. And so like and so they are um and so a big way that they drive engagement is that they show you things that align with your values. And don't worry if you're like someone who's like lol, I wish my feed showed me things that are congruent with my personality. I'm not, it never shows me things that are congruent with my beliefs. Like trust me, I'm gonna get into that. But like I don't think that I don't think social media would be nearly as successful if it is as it is if it just showed you one or the other. Like if it just showed you things that are congruent with your beliefs, and or if it just showed you things that were the opposite of your beliefs. I think they actually work very like symbiotically. Like I think that both of them benefit from the relationship. Um and so like and so they show you things that are I'm gonna move this down actually because that'll align more with what I have to say next. But like to kind of take a step back real quick, they show you things. Oh, whoops. There we go. They show you things that are emotionally stimulating. We believe in random people on the internet as trusted news source versus actual reporters who have done research and put time into the subject. Anyone can have a social media account, whereas not everyone can report on the topic. Yeah, so I really like this quote from like Pirate Software, which is like April Fool's Day is my favorite day of the year because it's the only day that like we look at news articles on the internet and we're like, that's bullshit. Like, and like, cause like we don't do that. Like we just trust news sources and everything. And obviously I think it's such a delicate balance because like, how do you know what's real and what's not? because like there are people who know what they're talking about who are wrong, and there are people who don't know what they're talking about who are right. But that doesn't mean we should just automatically trust everyone who doesn't know what they're talking about and trust everyone that does know what they're talking about. So like it's such a weird balance of like what do we actually believe in. So it's that's why I think it's so hard. It's like such a delicate balance there. Um so um so let's see here. So they show you things that are emotionally stimulating. So this does not mean happy or sad. It just means that as long as they can make you stimulated, that will make you focus on the app more, and that will and like we always say this. It's like, why do you scroll? And it's like, because I'm bored. And it's just like, okay, so this is the antidote to boredom, because social media, it's like, why do I keep scrolling? And it's like, because you're so intolerant of having no of having no emotional stimulation, that the social media is over here and it's like, hey, I could give you emotional stimulation, and then you do it. Like you give it this, and then you give into it, and then you get stimulated. And so like it's really about the stimulation and not about like the quality of the emotion that you're getting. And I think most people have kind of figured this out. And so what this does, so it shows you things that align with your values, and it shows you. So actually, I'm gonna pause. So what it does, let's talk about echo chambers for a second. So it shows you stuff aligning with your values. This puts your fear at ease, and this boasts your ego. So like a lot of people think, so in this case I do mean this, but like I need to clarify that like just because something boasts your ego doesn't mean that like ego is not just positive feelings towards us. I'm talking about like the spiritual interpretation of it, like the ahamkar. So like anything that's comparative. Like if you think you're a piece of shit, or if you think you're awesome, both of those are comparative. They're both ego. So like someone who hates themselves would still have a big ego. But like in the West, we think of having a big ego as like you're full of yourself. And I would even argue that like there's no one who's truly full of themselves. Like if you focus on yourself a lot, that's a defense mechanism in itself. But like people are free to disagree with that. That's just my opinion. And so like it puts your fear at ease, and then it boasts your ego. And then I'm actually going to say boosts, because I know a lot of people think that boasts is like the other. So it boosts your ego. And so what this does is that this creates an echo chamber. And what is an echo chamber? What is the functional purpose of an echo chamber? An echo chamber is there to make us feel righteous. Like it's there to make us feel, and I'm not calling out any specific political affiliation. Like I know that like echo chambers typically associate with like more like the liberal side nowadays, because it's like, oh look, they're all going to blue sky. What a bunch of sissies like that. And I'm not making that comparison, because as someone who used to be very conservative, like I was in very much a conservative echo chamber. So like echo chambers absolutely exist on both sides. Like they're but like echo chambers are there to make sure, because like when we have cognitive dissonance, which is when something in our brain is conflicting, like if it's like, well, I want to quit smoking, but I don't quit smoking, then this reduces the cognitive dissonance or cognitive discord by making a rationale of the world that makes sense. So, you know, it's a lot less scary to think it's a lot less scary to assume that you are just simply smarter than other people and they are dumb and brainwashed, than it is to assume that like maybe this idea that I think is so evil is actually right. Because then what if I'm making the mistake and I'm on the bad side? Like, and so like that's actually weirdly like a more at ease sort of mind. And then what it also does is it boosts your ego. And so like if you see a bunch of people saying like anyone who thinks blank is stupid, then like you're going to think, oh, I'm not part of that, so I'm not stupid, and it makes you feel good. Like it and what this does is, once again, the ego activates as a response to as a defense mechanism. So it activates in response to protecting you it wants to protect you from hurt. And so really think about like when your ego activates and you feel good about yourself, like how would it feel if like you didn't know if you were totally right, or you didn't think that you were actually correct about this thing. And it's like, but I am correct because, you know, human rights and all this sort of stuff. But like literally think about it. Like, I'm not saying to question your beliefs. I'm just saying, like, notice when the ego specifically activates and props up these specific beliefs. Next, I want to talk about, so now we've established that social media will create this sort of echo chambery situation. Now it will strategically breach the echo chamber. And I hate this because like echo chambers are like such like a political term now, but I truly don't mean this in any political bias sort of side. I literally mean echo chambers in the sense that like it, like all you see is like people who agree with you and tell you how right you are. Like a lot of hyperbolic, a lot of very inflammatory views about how correct one side is that happens to be your side. That's what I mean when I talking about echo chamber. It's not any sort of like liberal or conservative connotation to it. So like when we're in this echo chamber, like now what this has done is it has conditioned our brain to be less on edge. It has forced us to put our guard down because we're like, okay, so like everyone agrees with me. My cognitive dissonance is at an all-time low. I feel good about this. And then what it also does is it boosts your ego. It's like, by the way, I'm correct. I'm great. I'm awesome. Like, I'm not like those stupid conservatives and or liberals, like whatever, you know what I mean? So like what it does, it will now, like we said, it strives for emotional engagement. So now when your brain starts to acclimatize to this, when it starts to form a tolerance, this is why I think that if it was just showing you a pure echo chamber, that social media actually wouldn't be as addictive as it is. So what it does is once it lowers your guard, in order to prevent you from getting bored, in order to continuously change up the stimulation type so that way you keep engaging with it differently, what it then does is it strategically it breaches the echo chamber, so it reactivates fear that let its guard down. And then what it also does is it attacks the ego. And like you guys may be looking at this and thinking like, well, we just boosted our ego, so it should be stronger. No, the ego gets boosted as a defense mechanism to prevent against oncoming threats. So therefore, it still is actually very responsive to oncoming threats. And so what this does is it basically puts you in a mindset that is like, okay, I'm correct about everything. And also everyone agrees with me. So those are two things that are really protecting me from the scariness of like the unknowable void that is other people's opinions. So I both feel comfortable because everyone agrees with me and I feel validated, and I feel that I am now smarter than everyone, and and I'm part of the winning team. And now what it does is it will give you an inflammatory state. So like this is very you know, when I was very conservative, you know, my feed would be like all like, you know, like Ben Shapiro videos and stuff like that, or like libs owned sort of stuff. And then what would happen is like one out of every couple dozen videos would be like why conservatives are stupid. Like it would like that's a very like sanitized way to put it, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about. It would be like why conservatives are stupid, and like what does that do to my echo chambery brain at that moment? All it does is make me infinitely more scared because now my brain let down its guard and now it attacked that, and it's like, oh, you thought you were comfortable in your own little echo chamber, you thought the world made sense, boom, here's something that actually counteracts your exact world belief. And then it attacks the ego because I was like, okay, because everyone agrees with me and because everyone's giving me all these explanations for why I'm right, like why they're right and therefore I'm right and we're on the winning team, I feel good about myself. Now someone comes in attacking my entire side, that makes me question my beliefs. That immediately, even though you can argue that it makes people respond in a way that makes them believe their beliefs more, which is true, like that comes from like doubling down out of like fear, because like if you like how scary it is to like admit that the thing you've like foundationally centered yourself on is like incorrect in some way, or it has a potential to be incorrect. Like that's terrifying. And so like for the liberal side, it would be like, you know, they'd be in a bunch of videos that are like why conservatives are evil, why climate change is real, all this sort of stuff. And then like and then they'd get like one Ben Shapiro video, like actually just from like the Daily Wire. And like that's what causes this sort of like, and that's what causes this heightened emotional response. And then like once it gives you that video, don't worry, after you're emotionally heightened, now we can now that your ego's thoroughly attacked and you need more and more confirmation, and as your fear is at an all-time high, we're going to give you a couple dozen videos that actually still confirm your belief. So we take it back down, we take the fear back down, and we boost the ego back up. So do you see how these 2 meters go like this? But whether or not the fear is going, as long as the fear, because of the fear and the ego both went down, then like, you know, that's like healthy. But like what it does is it continues to like boost the ego, lower the fear, raise the ego. Boost the ego, lower the fear, raise the fear, lower the ego. Like, and then, well, I guess the ego would be like there in all cases, like, which kind of makes sense. But you guys kind of get what I mean. Like, no matter what, the fear is like fluctuating, and then the ego will respond accordingly. So you're kind of in this state where no matter what, you're emotionally stimulated. And now we kind of see how social media is such an addictive trap, because it sets you in this cycle of validation. You're right about everything. Don't worry, sweet baby. The world all makes sense and nothing is confusing and everything you've ever thought is correct. And then it hits you with one, but wait, maybe it's not. Maybe you're wrong about everything. You ever think about that? What if you're stupid? This person thinks you're stupid. Are you going to take that? And then it puts you in that position where like now, in order to not be shredded by this wave of negative emotion, your ego instinctually, adaptively has to activate in order to protect you. This is why people on social media think that like they not only, because think about it, if your ego keeps having to activate and you keep having to double down, now it suddenly makes sense why everyone's beliefs become so hyperbolic over time on social media. Because like let's say you leaned 51% of the way, like on one case, and then 49% on the other way. Now the 49%, and then you see a bunch of people that's like, actually 51% is correct. The 51% side of you is correct. And then you're like, okay. And you're moving towards 55%. 59%, 60%. Okay, so now it's 60-40. And then someone comes in and says, actually, people on the side that you're now 60% on, those people are stupid. And what does the brain do? It doesn't go, oh, maybe I should listen to this person and stuff. It says, no, because what have I been doing here if I'm wrong? If I was wrong, then I've been moving towards evil. I've been moving towards misinformation. And how scary is that? Because that means my brain doesn't have the ability to curate proper information. Like every other human being on the planet. Like, so it's like, and I'm falling into the trap that this thing always wants to do. Like, and so then now, instead of going from seeing something that's the opposite, and you go from 60-40 to like 50-50 again, instead now you're at 70-30. And then before you know it, you're at 80-20. And then we've got all these people on the internet who are 100-0. This is why no one knows how to have a conversation anymore. Because every time, because we have it be so binary. It's like either this side is right or this side is right. Like, there's no room for nuance anymore. And what does that do? And obviously people know this stuff, but like, why is that so scary? It's because your ego has been strategically activated by social media and the way that it's programmed. And so if you lose the debate, like, then it's a problem with you. You have a problem. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope it does. Like that. So like now, so like we talked about how like it creates this cycle. Like these two things create a cycle of like, oh, don't worry, you're right about everything. Actually, you could be wrong about everything. And what that does is it forces people to just continuously double down or deal with the consequences of knowing that they have either been wasting their time or they could have been, they don't know which side's trying to brainwash them. And so they just hardcore steer it. Instead of swerving around the street, they just double down and they just go into one of the ditches. And so let me see. And so now we're gonna take a little moment, and common viewers of the channel will remember this stuff. But like we've got the part of the brain called the amygdala, fear center. It also is like it also has a big part in like dopamine and stuff. But like I call it the fear center, and this is what typically like helps people understand it. And that produces cortisol. Obviously, a part of your brain that has like millions of neurons is not going to be responsible for just one thing, but like we're going to oversimplify on purpose. So cortisol is the stress hormone. And so what the amygdala does is whenever it senses danger, it's going to responds to danger with black and white thinking. So like if we see a view that is the opposite of ours, that's scary. Like whether we want to admit it or not, or whether we want to say like how confident we are. I used to be a surface level incredibly confident in my beliefs, but then I realized that me being so outwardly confident, that was a symptom of, oh, I can't be wrong. You know, like I can't be wrong. Like someone who's actually truly confident in their beliefs is more than happy to be proven wrong. And not in the like, come on, debate me. So once I win the debate, I can prove that I'm right about everything. No, like people who are actually confident don't debate. They just like simply discuss. They don't try and win. They like actually just like are like, oh, let me approach this with the idea that I could be wrong, not just like the performative. Oh, I'm out here for calm discussion, and then they like debate everyone. That's what I used to do when I was like very conservative, and so like like what it does is it responds to danger with black and white thinking, and it removes nuance. So think about like the benefit of this. So like if we're trying to survive in the wild, we see something that's potentially dangerous. Do we want to have the nuanced view, or do we want to have the black and white view of this is absolutely dangerous? It's more adaptive to obviously just think, yeah, this is absolutely 100% dangerous. So like, and so it's actually adaptive for our brain to think to ourselves like, okay, it's actually adapted for our brain to think to ourselves like, okay, what I think is absolutely correct. We don't have time to think about like the nuances of this thing. And like that social media companies will take advantage of this. So they will literally like, they will show you something that's scary and attacks your ego, and then that makes you more stressed because the ego like involves a lot of stress. And then it will literally, through the activation of the amygdala and the releasing of cortisol, it will literally remove your nuance and create more black and white thinking, which once again will feed into this cycle. Like, do you guys see how like this creates such a vicious cycle? And this is why you can never put your phone down, because if you put your phone down, then like, because every time, notice whenever you feel like you're not actually confident in your beliefs, notice that your brain will always go to the internet for comfort, for confirmation bias. And then vice versa, like imagine all the times that like you've wanted to put your phone down, and think about what keeps you there. It's because you're not entirely confident in your beliefs. And once again, superiority complexes are just inferiority complexes manifesting in a different way. Like it's always like an insecurity. And so like the people who boast about their argument and say, debate me, bro. Come on, debate me, bro. Those are the people who are secretly the most, like, because you'd think that they're the most confident, because it's like, why would they be putting themselves out there? But like the reason they need to debate people is because they need to prove to themselves that they're correct. Because if I beat everyone in a debate, then I can know for sure that my beliefs are correct. But the fact is that we just never know if our beliefs are totally correct. So like the best thing to do is just be open-minded, because like if everyone's open-minded in a situation, the odds are that like everyone would just be, if everyone starts to be open-minded, then like, whatever's correct typically would float to the top. What creates misinformation is this black and white thinking, because everything's attached to our ego and therefore makes us stressed. And so like, yeah, so like the ego will come in to protect us from all sorts of things. From us feeling stupid. It will protect us from us feeling confused, scared, or unconfident. So like if you feel unconfident in your beliefs, don't worry, your handy dandy little ego is going to come in and tell you that actually you're right about everything and it's just other people that are stupid. What the ego does is it either builds you up or it knocks you down. So like if you think very one-dimensionally about yourself, like then it's odds are that like weirdly, even though people are like, well, actually my brain's out to get me and it hates me because it just tells me like that I'm terrible the whole time, it's actually protecting you from something that's way scarier, and that's like the unknowable. Like it's way easier to think, well, I'm just definitively a bad person, than it is to think like, well, like the world is like scary and unknowable and I won't know the result, because then like the world makes sense. The brain would much rather the world makes sense and we're just like and we just get hurt all the time. It would much rather that than a world where we are it would much rather a world where we are the bad guy than a world that is confusing and doesn't make sense. The brain hates incongruency, like incongruency with what we think versus what is happening in the world. It hates that more than it hates self-deprecation or self-pity or all this sort of stuff. Very important thing to understand about the brain. So like if you feel overly stupid, then understand that the ego is either going to lean into that or it's going to steer hard the other way and say, actually, everyone else is stupid. But notice how it tries to make sense of the world. Like, it can't accept that everyone just has different opinions. It has to know what is right and wrong. Because if it doesn't know if it doesn't know what's right and wrong, you don't know what's right and wrong. And how scary is that? You could be bad if that happens. And so the people who are most subjected to like the thoughts of ego and stuff are people who fundamentally think that like they could be bad people, or they're terrified of being bad people, which is kind of what's so tragic about this. And so like this all reduces cognitive flexibility. So like think about this, like cognitive flexibility is our ability to be like nuanced and think of outside the box on things. So like we notice that everyone is obviously very radicalized on the internet. They're obviously all very black and white thinkers. And so like why is it the way that it is? It's because of this cycle of ego, fear, all this sort of stuff. And like because when your ego is in check and your fear signals are high, you bet that is and when it keeps soothing you but then hating you and then soothing you, this is why people with anxious attachment styles are addicted to attachment despite it hurting them often more than it helps them, because this is also why gambling exists. Like we have to think about like that. So let's actually define this. So like variable reinforcement is more addicting than fixed reinforcement. So like what this means is that like this is why things like gotcha, gambling, anxious attachment to relationships. So like we actually as humans, paradoxically, we get more addicted to things the less consistently they happen. So like you know, like this operates on something called denial of reward. So like, you know, this is why no one's like, I'm addicted to Yoshi's Crafted World, but I am addicted to Dark Souls, because like those games are harder and so they deny you the reward, and that you don't win every time. You actually don't know when you're going to win. And so when you do get that win, it hits you like crazy. And so like this works on the same principle, because like you don't know how long your confidence will last, your faux confidence. And so yeah, so like basically you're going to have like, because social media makes you so scared in that sense, it's very it makes you scared to lose the confidence. And so like, but when you're so scared of your ego, like, and you're so scared of it being like, wait, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong? All these things that's whispering in your ears, the equivalent of getting that gotcha hit is like when you get the reinforcement back, you know? Cause like now instead of like, cause it doesn't work on exactly the same principle, because like in echo chambers, like the things that fit your point of view are going to be more prevalent. So it's like, it's not the same as like gambling, because obviously you lose, but you know, it works on like a kind of different axis. But like the thing is that like the consistency of your emotions is not fixed. Like it is on a completely seemingly random, but actually very intentionally calculated algorithm of when you're going to start getting bored of getting validated, and then suddenly it makes you question your beliefs. So you're always constantly hungry for this validation that you're not wrong. And so that's what social media does. It creates an artificial hunger in your brain for satisfaction that you are the correct one. And this is why no one wants to have discussions about anything, because that would threaten the ego. Because what if I'm wrong? The internet convinces you that being wrong is like a cardinal sin. No one can just be wrong and be like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm sorry, I didn't realize, but thank you for educating me." Like no one says that, because you know then like you're just like an anti-intellectual. But like that's the most intellectual thing you could do. Like the smartest people you ever meet, like if you correct them, they'll thank you. Like, but like I don't know. I don't think it's true confidence to be like, debate me, bro. Because like, if you need, why do you need to debate someone? Why do you need to prove that point? So like what this all does is it reduces cognitive flexibility So it reduces the nuance in the mind because your fear center is activated and your ego is activated. Both of these things want black and white thinking. Your ego either wants to think you're the greatest person ever or the worst person ever because it's protecting you from hurt. And one of those explanations will likely make sense of the world. You need to be at one extreme for the ego to be satisfied, which is why it's just a losing battle to feed it in the first place. And same with the amygdala. The amygdala, when it responds, it wants black and white thinking because it wants a clear course of action. It doesn't want to be frozen thinking about what to do next when there's like a bear in front of me. So these things create a cycle. It continuously, through variable reinforcement, it's not on a fixed schedule of emotional stimulation. It actually is very variable with how much it gives you this sort of content versus this sort of content. That makes it addicting. And then what makes you compulsively continue from there is needing the ego to be satisfied and needing the amygdala to be satisfied, which are both going to be achieved through the loss of your nuance and your inability to have conversations with people. So like, and I want to say as a big disclaimer, like I know that there are people on the internet who like propagate things like violence and stuff like that. I'm not making any judgment call. Like I have my own opinions, sure, on whether or not like they deserve to be called out and everything like that. But like, I'm not making any statement on that. I'm just saying that, like, notice when your cognitive flexibility is low. Like, notice when you're not thinking nuanced about something. And it's also really easy to tell when this is, because ask yourself, am I being nuanced about this thing? And your brain might try and, like, mumble under its breath, no, but, and then it tells you all these reasons that you're right. And that's when you can catch it. And you don't need to, I'm not telling you to, like, realize that, like, you know, maybe hate is right. Like, I still think you should stand by your beliefs and stuff, but I genuinely think that, like, society, because, like, in her question, she specifically said, like, ultimately resulting in a lack of social development in our current world. I do think that this negatively impacts our social development because I think the exchange of information has gone from casual to ranked competitive. Like, it's now, like, I can't ever lose an argument or gain new information because then my MMR goes down. I'm going to be hard stuck at bronze. Like, but if I keep doubling down and refusing to hurt my ego, or I refuse to give in to my amygdala wanting me to lose my nuance and get black and white thinking, like, if I keep doing that, then I can at least perceive that my intelligence is challenger level. But, like, what you're really doing through that is actually reinforcing that, like, you're secretly at bronze. But, like, everyone's okay being at bronze intelligence-wise as long as they think that they're challenger. And, like, let me tell you, when I studied politics every day, when I was, like, hyper down the conservative timeline, and I'm not making a statement about other people's intelligence I'm saying because I was in an echo chamber and because I refused to appraise my own values in a genuine way. I convinced myself that I was open-minded, but I wasn't, because it made me really upset when people disagreed with me. Like, and that's because I was really insecure about it. My intelligence was very low. Now I think that I'm very open-minded, and I think that even though I don't study nearly as much, I think that I could, like, have a very, very intelligent conversation with someone, whereas before I think that was impossible because the internet was convincing me that it was against me. And so, like, you know, when your ego boat has a bunch of holes in it, you're just going to focus on patching up the ego. You don't have time to start rowing the boat. You know, so like that, like, and so what do we do about this? Right? Like, what's the conclusion? It's just like, okay, social media is bad. It just drives engagement, and it does that through constantly putting you at ease, telling you you're great, and then challenging that. And because it raised the ego's now actually more vulnerable because the ego is a source of suffering. Like, do you guys get that? Because the ego is a defense mechanism, it can never be purely a source of pleasure. It has to be responding to danger, which means that the brain constantly feels subtly under attack if your ego is so this is why people who boast about things all the time, this is why they're truly not confident. is because if they were confident, they wouldn't need the ego. But like the ego focuses on themselves all the time because it's a defense mechanism. So like through the brain activating your two main defense mechanisms, the cortisol, which is your stress hormone, removing your nuance, and then the ego forcing you to pick either you're totally right or you're totally wrong. Typically you're totally right on social media. That's why they give you the echo chamber more than they give you the opposing opinion. Like through these two things, it creates this infinite cycle of, oh, okay, I feel totally right about everything. Now I'm about to click off social media. Wait, no, I saw something that disagreed with me. I'm not incorrect. Quickly, I need more validation. Oh, okay, I'm getting more satisfied. Okay, no, I just saw another thing that said they disagreed with me. Like the reason that this cycle exists is because like it's so emotionally stimulating, both from like a gambling adjacent sort of way, but also like it just takes advantage of the way the human mind produces defense mechanisms. Because once again, like objectively stress is like a defense mechanism because like it exists to warn us of danger. So like it takes advantage of two mental defense mechanisms, the ego and the amygdala, or cortisol rather. And it traps us in this endless cycle that's like as addicting as like gambling and also as like obsessive as most like mental illness thought loops. So like what do we like do about this, right? Like how do we fix this? And like the answer is kind of like I don't have an answer, but I have thoughts. Like I can't. If someone figured out the answer to social media, we would have done it by now. But like my best thing, here's what I did and stuff because basically I fought social media and I lost. Like as someone who's going to be a therapist and someone considers them themselves very mentally healthy, like I lost, if that's how you want to put it. Like I tried slowly over the course of a couple months to find where my limit was with social media. And I tried because like I still wanted to like see my friends' posts, and I still wanted to see my friends' posts, and I still wanted to get funny memes to show my friends and all this sort of stuff. I still wanted all of this stuff to talk about and everything like that, because like that's why it's also so hard, because it's now they're trying to make it inseparable from like talking. They're from like talking with friends. They're trying to make that the way we do that, so that keeps us there even longer. That's how they really get you, is with the necessity for human connection, is by ostracizing yourself from human connection in a way. Like, and I slowly tried to figure out where my limit was. Like I practiced mindfulness, and I was using social media less and less, and I was trying to figure out, okay, what amount of social media can I use that I'm glad I went, like seriously ask yourself this question. I'm glad, not like okay with, I'm glad I went on social media for this amount of time. And like, you can call this bias or not. I don't count YouTube really. Like I know it's social media, but like I think it works a lot differently. Like I think the YouTube algorithm actually works a lot differently than like, even though I cited like Ben Shapiro stuff earlier, like with like YouTube and everything, I actually think that like things like Twitter are way bigger propagators of this, but I could be wrong because I only have my own feed as proof for that. So I could be totally wrong. People could have different experiences, and I encourage them to share that. But like But like I noticed that like my brain just works differently on things like Twitter. And so I basically kept reducing, and then like, I got off of Twitter and I went to Blue Sky, and that was very much less stimulating, but very much better for my brain. And so like, and so I kept just like, once I had kind of a break from it and I could kind of be on Blue Sky and I could kind of be less stimulating, I realized something amazing, but also kind of crazy. I'd been thinking this whole time, if only they made a social media platform that didn't make me go through this cycle of ego and fear, then I would like it. And then I had a terrible, terrible realization, but it was also amazing. I don't want that, because that's literally what Blue Sky is, and it's so boring on there. At least to me, as someone who tolerates boredom a lot better than other people. Like, I don't run from boredom nearly as much. Like, if I have nothing to do, I won't like pull out my phone. I'll literally just like stare off into space and like think. Like, but like I realized that it was so boring. And like that's when I realized the reason that I use social media is the reason I hate social media. So like I realized that this whole cycle that happens here, this is actually what keeps me on there. And I thought I had convinced myself because once again, cognitive dissonance, that might be it. It might just be simply that I just didn't know. But I wanted to believe that there was some way I could have the joys of social media without the downsides. And not for everyone else. For a lot of people having a great time with Blue Sky. I'm not saying get off of Blue Sky. I'm saying that for me, I realized that I don't care about social media. I just don't care about it. And so without the surface level stimulation, the anger and fear cycle that it creates in my brain that's so addicting, without that, I just don't I have better ways to use my time. I just don't want to do it. Like I literally think that staring into space is like more rewarding, honestly. And there's like a lot of like neuroscience behind that, but like I can talk about the science of boredom another day, but like that's just me. Like I literally I couldn't believe it, but like that's why I don't do it. And so I'm not saying this as an answer, as my answer to the question is not get off of social media and realize that that's the only thing keeping you in there. All I ask is that you're aware and you're intentional. So I want you guys to, if you do anything, once again, this isn't mental health advice. This is just my advice as like a person. Like I think that like as someone who has gone through social media, not as like a therapist or anything like that, not as like a future therapist, like my advice would typically be to someone that they should be very mindful as they're using social media. Like, oh, there's my ego. Oh, there's my amygdala. Okay, so what if I'm wrong about this? Oh, that I see that activates the ego. Here it comes to my rescue. Da 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 da. You're either shit or you're either amazing. And like notice these things that we've highlighted here in excruciating detail. Like literally treat it like you're like running a test on yourself. Like go on social media and see what it does to your brain. And then don't confuse stimulation with dopamine. I mean, well, I guess it is kind of, forget that. Like, don't confuse dopamine and stimulation. Don't confuse that with happiness. Because, like, dopamine isn't happiness, actually. Like truly. Like, there are people, like, I use this example all the time. They're like drug addicts and like they're some of the least happy people ever, even though they get a lot of dopamine. You know, they get like unfathomable amounts of dopamine. They don't report to be very happy. So dopamine and happiness are different. So notice the difference between them. Be very mindful of it. And then afterwards, all I ask you do when you put down your phone, take 5 seconds and just ask yourself, ask yourself, how long did I just go on social media for? What did I get out of it? And am I happy that that's the way I spent my time? And if you're not happy with that, think of a replacement behavior. Think of like, okay, could I be drawing during this time? Would I rather just be kind of alone with my thoughts? Is there like a little fidget toy I can play with? Like, what would I rather be doing with my time than do this and stuff like that? And then like think of yourself like, okay, but when we're bored, we're probably not going to want to do that. Like, because your brain probably is going to gravitate towards the phone. It's like when we feel that resistance next time, do we want to still push forward or do we want to give into the social media? And then just think about it. Like, all I ask is that I don't want you to do anything specifically with whether or not you do or do not go on social media. All I want you to do is be intentional about it. Because we sacrifice so much of our time and we don't even realize how much we're sacrificing. So every time you're like done with a session, quote unquote, of social media, think to yourself, what did I get out of it? Was that worth my time? should I go on it less? What are replacement behaviors I could do instead of go on social media during that time? And if it's like, well, I would journal or I would like draw, but like my notebook's so far away. It's like, okay, make it easier on yourself. Why is social media so addicting? It's because it's so convenient. It's right there in our hand. It's right there in our hand. And oh, we were texting someone. Oh, social media is right there. It's one click away. They make it so easy. So like carry around a notebook. Like don't leave it in another room in a drawer or something. Like always keep it next to you. You know, I'm not, and that's just for the example of that. Like if you have like a fidget toy, always keep it on you. Like always make it easier to do the replacement behavior. But like if you go on social media for 7 hours a day and you somehow are like, yeah, I'm glad I do that. It's a very enriching experience. And this is the way I do want to be spending my time. And you truly think that that is not part of any sort of defense mechanism or anything like that? Like as a future therapist, I'd challenge that thought process because I struggle to imagine someone wouldn't be running from something in that sense. I'd recommend going to see a therapist and tell them that and see what they think, and like just give them your explanation and see what they think. But like I just ask that like you're intentional, because like the thief of social media is that it's like, oh yeah, well, if we go on social media, then like man, I go on social media for like 5 hours a day. I don't even realize it. It just like steals my time away. It's just so automatic. Before I know it, the time flew away. So like I'm okay with people going on social media. Just be very aware of the time you're spending and how you're spending it. And I literally think that that is the pure skill. It wasn't me going cold turkey. It wasn't me realizing that social media is bad. Literally all it was me being mindful as I was doing it and being very reflective after. And that's what caused me to realize that my line was not having it at all. Like, but your line might be different. You might realize like, okay, I'm comfortable with like 30 minutes a day. And I'm like, okay. If you're genuinely fine with that, then like make the conscious decision, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day on social media. And then like, that's my line. Past that point, I don't really get much more enjoyment or enrichment out of it. Like, and then just slowly set those boundaries. And if you fail the first time, don't be like, oh, well, see, it didn't work. Like, just like, you know, you can adapt your strategy. So let's just review before we end. Because I'm pretty sure we don't have any viewers right now. So this is really just going to be a VOD thing. But if there are any viewers out there, then if there are any viewers out there, if you have any questions, please let me know. But like the main thing is that so like let's go over her question again. Has the overconsumption of social media become detrimental to the human ability to form one's own opinion? Absolutely. Because it reduces your cognitive flexibility, which reduces because now when you see other people's opinions, they come from the outside world. That doesn't come from you. So like, understand this. Like, this is how advertisements work. Like, advertisements work because you see something and then it invokes an artificial desire within you. That desire didn't exist before the commercial was there. Now you had your soul filled, like you were full. And then now seeing this thing and seeing the commercial be like, see, look, you don't have this thing. You don't have this burger or something like that. Like, it creates an artificial hunger that was not there. And social media works the same way with belief systems, because you don't have the reason you need other people's approval and statistics and all this sort of stuff is because you are not confident in your ability to form good decisions. And so that's why you need so much confirmation from the world, because as much as you say that you believe what you believe, I'm okay with you believing that, but like, understand that, like, why are you so desperate to see how many people agree with you? I found out that despite me thinking that I was the most confident and self-assured person in the world, once I really introspected, I realized that it came from a deep-rooted insecurity that refused to accept the reality that I was stupid or incompetent. And so has it reduced our ability to form our own opinions? Absolutely, because it is born out of this cycle that exists only because we aren't confident in our opinions. So we need to look to the outside world. This is why so many people are directionless in their life, because they don't know what they want to do. And so the internet fills their brain with artificial desires, and that gives them direction. So like, like I don't know what I want to do with my day. And then I see like Andrew Tate making $5 more billion. Like, and then my brain realizes that I don't have that, and I see that he's happy, and then it tells me, oh, if we do that, we'll be happy. And then we get that, we go out and do that. Some people actually succeed, and then they're like, I'm still not happy. And it's like, why does that not make me happy? That desire didn't come from you. It came from the video you watched on social media. So like, if you really want to know a direction in your life, think about what you think. And like, if you want your opinions, think about your opinions and notice when you're thinking of those opinions, how invalidating your mind's going to be in response. Think about how much it's going to be like, oh, well, like, but what if we're wrong? Like, what if we're wrong? Think about how stupid we'd have to have a wrong opinion. Oh my God. Like, if you're wrong, you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're stupid. Like, it's just a lack of information. But I don't think that the way to get information is by looking at people's hyperbolic statements on social media. If you truly are concerned about having a lack of information, go look at like actual statistic websites and everything like that. Look at primary studies on things. Look at meta-analysis of studies. Go to the source of what these beliefs are based on. If you see an article about some, like, and then people will be like, oh no, who has the time to look up all these studies? The average amount of time people spend on their phone is what? 5 hours a day? 5 hours a day on like social media and stuff? And you don't have time to look up some articles about that stuff, but you claim to be like, oh no, you need to look up this stuff because you need to do this. It's just like, well, yeah, just be honest with yourself. It's because it's not as fun. It's just literally because it's not as fun. Like, it's not as thrilling. It doesn't have the thrilling highs and lows of competitive social media debating. Like, so like, like, just same with everyone. Like, I just want you to be in control of your usage. I don't want the social media to be in control of you. I think as long as you're intentional throughout life, and as long as you're actually doing a decision and you're not being swayed by subconscious processes like avoidance of cognitive dissonance, the ego, the amygdala, things like that, as long as you're not subconsciously being swayed into thinking that it's your own opinion, as long as you actually introspect and you look for your own opinions and you're intentional about everything that you do in life, then I think, like, in the wise words of Mr. Miyagi, if come from you, always right. If it comes from you, I don't think you can make a wrong decision in life. I just think you can. I think you could have made an optimal decision, but based on the information that you have, it's the only decision at that point because you just don't have the tools necessary to make different decisions. So yes, it's detrimental because it reduces our cognitive flexibility. It traps us in this cycle of defense mechanisms that actually it lowers our nuance levels, and then ultimately resulting in a lack of social development in our current world. Yes, our ability to communicate honestly and openly and actually take in new information and accept that we were wrong and maybe the other person's right. Our ability to even approach any conversation with someone who we heavily disagree with from a perspective that maybe there's a sliver of a chance that they're right has been severely destroyed. But we can rebuild it. Trust me. I used to be the conservative in the class wearing the suit and wanting to debate the blue-haired girl in my class. But like, I'm not saying that conservatives are wrong. I'm saying that now I can have a genuine conversation from the perspective that I might be incorrect. And I think it's so much more productive. And paradoxically, I'm better at convincing other people because they understand that I'm not trying to convince them. So they're more willing to hear me out. So I think that this is, through intentionality and through understanding of our defense mechanisms that are activating, I think that will overall, if the internet just magically all started doing this, that would lead to more open and honest conversations if we're just more okay with the potential of being wrong. Because the internet doesn't want us to be wrong. Because guess what? they're not accepting of the fact that they might be wrong. So why would they be accepting of the fact that you might be wrong? The things that they're hard on you about are the things that they are hard on themselves a million times harder. So yeah, it's been detrimental to our ability to form our own opinions, and it's ultimately resulting in a lack of development in our social world. Absolutely, in our current social development in our current world. Absolutely, 100,000%. That's absolutely correct. So I think that's it. I'm probably gonna because this is such an interesting topic. I'm probably gonna realize that I had a lot more to talk about, but I can't think of anything right now. I think I'm good. Um, yeah, I think I great question. If anyone has any questions, let me know. Obviously, if you want, I say this at the end of every stream. If anyone wants to come on the show, please let me know. Either comment on YouTube, message me on Discord, do whatever you want. You know, it's and I either want to talk with people or please leave a question that you want me to talk about. How like Oxdon talked about this. Like, please leave me a question and I can talk about it. Just give me anything to talk about. You want me to analyze a character? You have a question that's more along the line of Oxdon's? Like, please let me know. I love to talk about this sort of stuff, and I love to help people out with things that they're confused about or just want a little bit more clarification or a second opinion on. But yeah, so be responsible out there with social media. I hope you guys can find places where you feel very comfortable with your social media use and you can be happy about it. Because you're intentional and you're aware. And it might be a really hard journey because letting down the ego and the defense mechanisms, noticing they come up and not giving them the power they need to protect you, that opens yourself up to a lot of hurt that you might be suppressing. And in which case I would recommend you also go see a therapist because they can help you uncover that emotional energy in a very safe space. If you can't afford therapy, I'd look into insurance programs and I'd look into social help programs that or sliding scale therapists. Like, a lot of people actually give therapy for free. And so there's a lot of ways around that. So yeah. So yeah, great question, and be responsible, everyone. See you later.